The year is 1952. A modest record store in Memphis, Tennessee sits quietly between a barber shop and a five and dime. Inside, Sam Phillips is about to encounter something that will change not just music history, but an entire religious movement. A young quartet called the Blackwood Brothers has just walked through his door, carrying with them harmonies that seem to bridge heaven and earth. What Phillips doesn't realize is that he's witnessing the birth of what will become a billion-dollar empire. An empire built not on rock and roll or country music, but on something far more profound and commercially powerful: Southern gospel. But this story doesn't begin in that Memphis record store. No, it starts decades earlier in the cotton fields of the Deep South, where enslaved people and poor white farmers found themselves singing the same songs of deliverance, often without knowing they were creating the foundation for what would become America's most lucrative religious music industry. The roots of Southern gospel stretch back to the shape note singing schools of the 1800s, where traveling music teachers would arrive in small Southern towns with nothing but a pitch pipe and a book full of songs written in a unique notation system that looked like triangles, squares, and diamonds instead of traditional round notes. These teachers weren't just spreading music, they were spreading literacy, community, and most importantly, a standardized way of worship that could travel from town to town, state to state. James D. Vaughan understood this power better than anyone. In 1900, this Tennessee music publisher made a decision that would forever alter the landscape of American religion. Instead of simply selling songbooks, he began sending out quartets, young men who would travel from church to church, singing his published songs and selling his books. It was brilliant, really. The quartet served as living, breathing advertisements for his music, and the churches got free entertainment. But Vaughan had stumbled onto something much bigger than a clever marketing strategy. He had created the template for the modern Christian music industry. The Vaughan quartets would roll into small southern towns in Model T Fords loaded with songbooks, their voices trained to perfection, their repertoire carefully crafted to move both hearts and wallets. They weren't just musicians, they were salesmen, evangelists, and entertainers all rolled into one. And they were extraordinarily successful. By the 1920s, Vaughan's operation was generating what would be millions in today's dollars, employing dozens of quartets and reaching hundreds of thousands of churchgoers across the South. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Professor Archive, where we dive deep into the forgotten stories that shaped our world. I'm your host, and today we're exploring one of America's most surprising business success stories: the Southern gospel industry. Before we continue this fascinating journey, I'm curious about you, our incredible audience. Drop a comment and let me know, what's your profession, and how has music played a role in your work or daily life? I love hearing from teachers, construction workers, doctors, students, everyone who finds time to explore history with us. Your stories always add such richness to our community here. Now, back to our story. The success of the Vaughan quartets didn't go unnoticed. Soon, competitors emerged, each trying to capture their own piece of this growing market. The Stamps-Baxter Music Company, founded in 1926, took Vaughan's model and refined it even further. They created what they called all-night sings, marathon concerts that would literally last from sunset to sunrise, featuring multiple quartets, solo artists, and enough music to keep audiences glued to their seats for hours. These weren't just concerts. They were social events that rivaled county fairs in their drawing power. Families would travel hundreds of miles to attend an all-night sing, bringing picnic baskets and blankets, making full weekends out of these musical gatherings, and at every intermission, throughout every break, the songbook sales continued. The music industry had discovered something that Hollywood and the record companies were just beginning to understand. There was enormous money to be made in giving people exactly what they wanted to hear. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. As Southern gospel grew more popular and more profitable, it began to face a crisis of authenticity that would split the movement in two. The original spirit of Southern gospel, born from genuine religious experience and community worship, was increasingly at odds with the commercial demands of a growing industry. The Blackwood Brothers, the same quartet that walked into Sam Phillips's store that day in 1952, found themselves at the center of this tension. They had started as a family group, singing in small churches for love offerings that might total $5 or $10 on a good night. But by the 1950s, they were selling out civic auditoriums, recording on major labels, and earning more money than many doctors and lawyers. They had become, in essence, gospel music's first superstars. The transformation wasn't without cost. R.W. Blackwood, one of the founding brothers, often spoke about the strange feeling of singing songs about humility and sacrifice while counting the largest gate receipts in gospel music history. The Blackwood brothers were drawing crowds of 10,000 or more, selling merchandise, and pioneering the kind of fan engagement that would later become standard in all forms of popular music. Then came 1954, and tragedy struck in a way that would paradoxically cement Southern gospel's place in American popular culture. On June 30th, R.W. Blackwood and bass singer Bill Lyles were killed in a plane crash in Alabama. The gospel music world was devastated, but something unexpected happened at their funeral. Over 8,000 people attended the service in Memphis, and it was covered by newspapers across the nation. For the first time, mainstream America was forced to confront the reality that gospel music had quietly become a major cultural force. The tragedy also introduced the world to a young man named Elvis Presley. When the Blackwood brothers needed to replace their lost members, they held auditions. A 19-year-old Elvis showed up, desperate to join what he considered the premier musical group in the South. He didn't make the cut, but the influence of Southern gospel on his later style would be unmistakable to anyone who knew what to listen for. This connection between Southern gospel and mainstream popular music runs deeper than most people realize. The quartet harmony techniques, the emotional delivery style, the call and response patterns that became central to rock and roll, rhythm and blues, and country music all trace their roots back to those traveling quartets of the 1920s and 1930s. Consider the business model that Southern gospel pioneered, a combination of live performance, recorded music, publishing, and merchandise sales, all wrapped around a brand that promised not just entertainment, but transformation. Sound familiar? It should. It's the exact template that every successful musical act, from the Beatles to Beyoncé, has followed ever since. By the 1960s, the Southern gospel industry had evolved into something that would be recognizable to any modern music executive. There were booking agencies specializing in gospel acts, radio networks dedicated to gospel programming, and even the beginnings of what would become Christian television. The Cathedrals, the Happy Goodman Family, the Imperials, and dozens of other groups were touring constantly, playing to audiences that spanned multiple generations and crossed racial lines in ways that few other forms of entertainment could manage in the segregated South. The Happy Goodman Family deserves special mention here because they represented something new in the Southern gospel world: the rise of the mixed gender group. Vestal Goodman, with her towering beehive hairdo and powerhouse voice, became gospel music's first true female superstar. She could pack arenas just as effectively as any male quartet, and her success opened doors for countless women in what had traditionally been a male-dominated industry. But Vestal Goodman was more than just a successful performer. She was a canny businesswoman who understood that the Southern gospel audience was evolving. The post-World War II South was becoming more urban, more educated, and more sophisticated, and the music needed to evolve with it. Under her influence, the Happy Goodman family began incorporating elements of contemporary pop music into their sound, adding electric instruments and modern arrangements while maintaining the essential gospel message. This evolution wasn't without controversy. Traditional Southern gospel fans accused acts like the Happy Goodman family of selling out, of abandoning the pure quartet-based sound that had defined the genre for decades. The controversy came to a head at the 1969 National Quartet Convention in Memphis, when several traditional groups walked out during the Happy Goodman family's performance, protesting what they saw as the commercialization and secularization of sacred music. The walkout made national news and forced the Southern gospel industry to confront a fundamental question. Was it primarily a religious movement that happened to be profitable, or a commercial enterprise that happened to be religious? The answer, as it turned out, was both. and that duality would define the industry's trajectory for the next 50 years. The 1970s brought Southern gospel into the modern era with the emergence of the Gaither music group. Bill Gaither, a former high school English teacher from Indiana, understood something that many in the industry had missed. The real money wasn't in live performance or even record sales. It was in publishing and media rights. Gaither began not just writing songs, but building a publishing empire that would eventually control thousands of gospel compositions. The Gaither strategy was brilliantly simple. Instead of relying on traveling groups to spread his music, he used television. The Gaither Homecoming series, which began in the 1990s, brought together gospel music legends in comfortable living room-style settings, creating content that could be repackaged as television specials, DVDs, and live tours. It was multimedia marketing decades before that term became common in the music industry. But perhaps more importantly, Gaither understood his audience in ways that most entertainment executives never do. He recognized that Southern gospel fans weren't just looking for music. They were looking for community, for connection, for a sense of belonging to something larger than themselves. The Homecoming videos weren't slickly produced concert films. They were deliberately intimate, featuring aging gospel legends sharing stories, laughing together, and creating an atmosphere that viewers felt they could step into. The financial success of the Gaither model was staggering. By the 2000s, Gaither's various enterprises were generating tens of millions of dollars annually, making him one of the most successful figures in all of Christian entertainment. More importantly, he had proven that there was still a massive, underserved audience for traditional Southern gospel music, even as contemporary Christian music was dominating the charts. This brings us to one of the most fascinating aspects of the Southern gospel industry: its resilience in the face of changing musical tastes. While other genres rise and fall with cultural trends, Southern gospel has maintained a remarkably stable audience for over a century. The secret lies not in the music itself, but in what the music represents. Southern gospel concerts aren't just entertainment events. They're cultural rituals that reinforce community bonds and shared values. The audience for Southern gospel includes multiple generations of families, often spanning grandparents to grandchildren, all singing along to songs that have been passed down through decades. It's one of the last truly multi-generational forms of popular entertainment in America. The economic impact of this cultural staying power cannot be overstated. The National Quartet Convention, now held annually in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, draws over 100,000 attendees and generates millions of dollars in economic activity. The Singing in the Mountains Festival in North Carolina, the National Singing Convention in Nashville, and dozens of smaller regional events across the South contribute hundreds of millions of dollars annually to local economies. But the industry's influence extends far beyond direct economic impact. Southern gospel served as a training ground for countless musicians who went on to success in other genres. Beyond Elvis, artists as diverse as Dolly Parton, Alabama, and even members of contemporary acts like Lady Antebellum trace their musical roots back to Southern gospel. The vocal techniques, harmony structures, and performance styles that originated in those traveling quartets of the 1920s continue to influence popular music today. The contemporary Southern gospel industry would be barely recognizable to James Vaughn or the Blackwood Brothers. Today's major acts like the Gaither Vocal Band, Ernie Haas and Signature Sound, and Legacy 5 operate like sophisticated entertainment businesses with professional management, marketing teams, and distribution deals that rival those of mainstream recording artists. Yet, at its core, the industry still operates on the same principles that Vaughn discovered over a century ago. Give people music that speaks to their deepest beliefs and values, create opportunities for community and connection, and never forget that you're selling more than entertainment. You're selling hope, comfort, and belonging. The rise of digital streaming and social media has created new challenges and opportunities for Southern gospel. Younger artists like the Collingsworth family and Karen Peck and New River have built substantial followings through Facebook and YouTube, proving that the core appeal of Southern gospel can translate to new generations and new technologies. Perhaps most remarkably, the Southern gospel industry has remained largely independent of the major corporate consolidation that has affected most other forms of popular music. While Nashville's country music industry is dominated by a handful of major labels and management companies, Southern Gospel maintains hundreds of independent labels, booking agencies, and management firms, most of them family-owned businesses that have been passed down through generations. This independence has allowed Southern Gospel to maintain its authentic connection to its audience in ways that more commercialized genres often struggle with. Southern Gospel artists still regularly perform in small churches for modest love offerings, even as they may headline major venues the following weekend. This connection to grassroots religious community remains central to the industry's identity and success. The COVID-19 pandemic presented unprecedented challenges for an industry built around live, in-person performances. Churches closed, concerts were canceled, and the communal aspect that defined Southern Gospel was suddenly impossible. Yet the industry's response revealed both its adaptability and its deep understanding of its audience's needs. Artists quickly pivoted to online performances, drive-in concerts, and innovative hybrid events that maintained social distancing while preserving the communal experience that Southern Gospel fans cherish. The Gaither organization began streaming classic homecoming videos for free, providing comfort and connection during a time of unprecedented isolation. More importantly, the pandemic revealed the true scope of Southern Gospel's global reach. Online concerts drew viewers from around the world, exposing artists and industry executives to an international audience they had never fully appreciated. Southern Gospel, it turned out, had quietly become a global phenomenon, with devoted fans in Australia, Europe, Africa, and Asia. As we look toward the future, the Southern Gospel industry faces the same challenges confronting all traditional forms of entertainment. An aging core audience, competition from countless other forms of media and entertainment, and the ongoing fragmentation of American culture. Yet the industry's century-long track record suggests that it possesses something increasingly rare in modern entertainment: authentic connection to its audience's deepest values and needs. The story of Southern Gospel is ultimately the story of American entrepreneurship, religious faith, and cultural persistence. It demonstrates how a form of music rooted in the most humble circumstances, traveling teachers with pitch pipes, families singing in small churches, quartets with nothing but their voices and a dream, can evolve into a sophisticated multi-million-dollar industry while maintaining its essential character and mission. It's a reminder that in an age of corporate entertainment, conglomerates, and algorithmic music discovery, there's still enormous power in understanding your audience, serving their needs authentically, and never losing sight of the human connections that make music meaningful. From James Vaughan's first traveling quartet to today's streaming concerts and international audiences, Southern Gospel has built something that very few industries can claim: a sustainable, profitable enterprise that has genuinely improved people's lives while staying true to its founding principles. In a world where so many businesses struggle to balance profit with purpose, the Southern Gospel Empire stands as a remarkable example of how the two can not only coexist, but actually strengthen each other. The next time you hear those four-part harmonies, those stories of struggle and redemption, those voices that seem to bridge earth and heaven, remember, you're not just listening to music. You're experiencing the culmination of over a century of innovation, entrepreneurship, and unwavering faith in the power of song to build not just careers and companies, but communities that span generations. And that, perhaps, is the most remarkable achievement of all. In building their musical empire, the pioneers and practitioners of Southern Gospel didn't just create wealth, they created a lasting legacy of hope, connection, and joy that continues to enrich lives more than a century after it all began, in those dusty southern towns with nothing but a song and a dream. Thank you so much for joining us on Professor Archive today. If this deep dive into the Southern Gospel Empire fascinated you as much as it did me, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our explorations into the hidden histories that shaped our world. Share this video with someone who loves music history, and don't forget to tell us in the comments about your own musical background and experiences. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep discovering the amazing stories hiding in plain sight all around us.